All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to get things underway here. We're here tonight for our first joint budget work session with the school committee. Today is Thursday, December 18th, a little after 7 p.m. And our first order of business, as always, the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'm going to ask that we take a moment of silence for those victims and their families that were involved in the horrible acts that occurred at Brown University. Okay, next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land in which the town is now located. But this acknowledgement serves as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have the roll call.
Council President McEntee.
Here.
Council Vice President Marin.
Here.
Councilmember Bergner.
Here.
Councilmember Alley.
Here.
Councilmember Wedgemont.
Here.
All town council members are present.
Thank you.
School committee.
Oh, yep. Now we're going to move to the school committee.
School committee Chair Vetter.
Here.
School committee Vice Chair Restivo.
Here.
School committee member Brusso.
Here.
School committee member Mastinanti.
Here.
School committee member Shear.
Here.
School committee, School committee member Lander. It should be noted that school committee member Whitford is absent.
Thank you. Now, before we get to the budget presentations, we're going to move to item 5, consent agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Item 5.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us now to item 4A, discussion and solicitation of comments from the public relating to the general goals and objectives of the development of the fiscal year 26-27 municipal and school budgets to include, but are not limited to, school enrollment, staffing, revenue, expenditures, and budget drivers. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to the town manager, Jim Manny, for a presentation.
Thank you. Tonight, we are at the joint budget work session, which is just what it says, a work session with the school department and the town. We usually go first, so we'll be going first with our presentation. It's a 21-page document that we will go through as quickly as possible, and Brian Sylvia and I, the finance director, will be alternating back and forth on some of the slides, but we'll begin shortly. I want to thank Brian Sylvia and Rose Bouchard, the deputy finance director, for all the hard work to get to this point in this document. So if you look on page 2, what is tonight's objective? 1, the budget process is based on data-driven understanding of the community's fiscal condition and translates its needs and priorities into services. 2, it facilitates a discussion between the town council and school committee members about the goals and objectives of the town as a whole. And 3, provide short and long-term fiscal data to guide decision-making in a transparent, deliberate process that informs the public. Look on page 3. This is what is required of the town in the hearings and the work sessions and the public hearings that we have. And I'll go through those so that anyone listening on YouTube or on TV will have those dates. So tonight, December 18th, 2025, this is the initial budget hearing with the town council and the school committee. In January of 26, on Monday the 5th, Tuesday the 6th of January, we have CIP work sessions. The first one's with the municipal departments, and the second one's with the school committee. Those are 7 p.m. on Monday, January 5th, and Tuesday, January 6th. On January 26th, also a Monday, at 7:30 p.m., there'll be a CIP public hearing and adoption. It'll be held at the town council during a regular session. In March of 2026, on March 10th, a Tuesday, and March 12th, a Thursday, at 7 p.m., There'll be operating budget work sessions number 1 and number 2, March 10th and 12th, 7 p.m., the operating budget work sessions 1 and 2. On March 16th, a Monday, at 7 p.m., operating budget work session number 3. On March 18th, a Wednesday, at 7 p.m., the preliminary budget adoption at a town council meeting during the regular session. April 26th, April 2026. On April 6th, a Monday, at 7 p.m., the operating budget public hearing number 1 with the town council and the school committee. And on April 7th, a Tuesday, at 7 p.m., the operating budget public hearing number 2 with the town council and school committee again. On April 27th, a Monday, at 7:30 p.m., the final budget adoption at a town council meeting during the regular session. Page 4. Under the Town Charter, Section 4221 and 4222, under proposed budget and budget. These are the requirements. 1, the initial budget hearing to discuss goals and objectives between December 1st and January 15th. The town manager's proposed budget, submission of the budget and budget message on or before March 1st. The town council's preliminary budget workshops. The town council shall review the proposed budget in public workshops on or before March 22nd. Public hearings. 2 public hearings must be held on separate days for municipal and school budgets on or before April 18th. Petitions to the town council on the budget. Any qualified elector of the town can petition to make an amendment to the budget. Petitions are due by April 21st. The final town council approval on the budget. The town council shall consider any petitions to the budget before final budget adoption on or before May 1st. The referendum petitions. Any qualified elector of the town can petition on the appropriation of funds in the budget with 200 qualified signatures. And then finally, the budget referendum. The town clerk shall cause a referendum ballot to be held on the Tuesday following the first Saturday in June. Let's go to page 5. Let's talk about the annual operating budget of the town. On the left side, you'll see a list. What is funded? School programs and facilities, public safety, police, EMS, fire alarm services, the debt service, personnel cost, libraries, roads, bridges, dams, public buildings, snow plowing, parks and recreation facilities and programs, senior programs, land records, licenses, and permits. How are these funded? On the right side of the slide, property tax revenue, fair share development fees, assets held in capital reserve funds, state school housing aid, real estate conveyance fees, fund balance, general obligation bonds, future CIP revenue transfers, state, federal, and nonprofit grants, rents, interest income, and the sale of assets. Page 6. Let's discuss the capital improvement program. A capital improvement plan, or the CIP, contains all the individual capital projects, equipment purchases, and major studies for a local government, in conjunction with construction and completion schedules, and in consort with financial plans. The plan provides a working blueprint for sustaining and improving the community's infrastructure. It coordinates strategic planning, financial capacity, and physical development. A capital improvement plan is the cornerstone of our government's long-term capital planning. The CIP has 2 parts, a capital budget and a capital program. 1, the capital budget is the spending plan for capital items in the upcoming fiscal year, which is commonly referred to as pay-as-you-go. And 2, the capital program is a plan for capital expenditures that typically spans 5 to 10 years beyond the capital budget in the upcoming fiscal year. This town has a 6-year capital program. Let's look at page 7 and then page 8, and I'll turn those over to Brian Sylvia.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening. So on page 7 is a summary of the town manager's proposed capital improvement summary program for the upcoming 6 years, fiscal year '27 through fiscal year 2032. This slide details the capital costs that will be outlined in the town manager's plan. The next slide is a summary of the capital funding that will be detailed within this plan. As mentioned earlier by the town manager, the first year is the pay-go funding. That depicts the total for the general fund is $2,917,000. And the overall plan for year 1 is just over $71 million, with obviously the large chunk of that being debt service related to year 2 of financing on the new high school project. One thing I wanted to point out, and you'll notice this on the next page, the general fund that you're seeing here, $2.9 million, there are multiple funding sources. That $2.9 million does not represent the amount that the town manager is proposing for a town allocation from the general fund to fund these projects. We'll detail that in the funding in the next slide. I just wanted to start on that right there. So flipping to page 8. Again, here's the funding proposed within this 6-year CIP. And just to detail that $2.9 million from the general fund, if you look at the first 3 items in fiscal year '27, the general fund is proposed at $2,077,000, which is a proposed increase of $94,000. $70,000 from the EMS billing fund to fund EMS capital, $304,000 from 2002 bond proceeds to fund some projects for DPS, and finally, going towards the bottom of the page where you see capital reserve general fund, those are existing capital funds that have been reserved from prior capital budgets for capital funding that will be utilized in this fiscal year, and that's what makes up that $2.9 million in project costs for the general fund. The one thing I wanted to note on this page, certainly worth noting, down at the bottom, the school projects. You'll see the Capital Reserve Schools Fund 429. That is the school department's capital reserve. They will be fully funding the capital projects proposed for fiscal years '27 and '28, as noted here. That Capital Reserve Fund 428, that is a town-administered capital fund for the school department, and the school department has requested funding from the town for the balance, or $27 million, of their $33 million capital fund.
Can you explain that?
Yeah.
What are they asking? $27 million?
So the entirety of their capital project, I'll go back to the prior, the entirety of their capital requests over the 6-year plan is $33.6 million. They're proposing funding of $6.5 million, and they'd be looking to the town for just over $27 million for the balance of the funding. Again, all that we're taking up right now in terms of funding is year 1, which the schools will be funding. This will be discussions between the town council and the school committee in terms of how that funding could or will be disseminated, but the town is putting forward the request that has been received from the school department. But at this point, I think it's safe to say we don't have an identified funding for that $27 million. Those are noted projects that need to be taken care of, and that will probably discussion for another day, but that is the capital projects for the school department. The one thing I did want to note on this page, so the capital projects in FY '27 for Community Rec Center, Neighborhood Guild, the Water Fund, Wastewater Fund, Senior Center are all fully funded from those funds, and and the school department are not seeking capital funding in FY '27 from the general fund.
Good.
Yes.
Page 9, the property tax maximum levy. To Rhode Island general law, a city or town may levy a tax in an amount not more than 4% in excess of the total amount levied and certified by the city or town for its previous fiscal year. Growth in the tax base does not mean additional revenue will be realized by a city or town. The tax levy cap applies to the tax levy. not individual property taxes or tax rates. The 4% cap is not a legal limit on property tax transfers made to the school department. Page 10. This is just a slide that would show if you choose to max out at 4% in the increase of the tax levy, what the impact would be. It's not saying it's recommended. It's not saying that it's proposed. It's saying if the town needed a 4%, you can see that number in the bottom right, $3.612 million. If the town needed that amount of money, which is the max you could raise the tax levy, that is what the impact would be on the town. It's not a recommendation, it's just a baseline of how much you could raise it under the state law. Page 11. The property tax levy over a 5-year period. If you look at the top portion of that slide, you'll see that in the far right side, you'll see that, 21, 22, the percent increase was 0.5 percent of the tax levy went up. 22, 23, 1.17, 23, 24, 1.74, 24, 25, 0.56%, and then 25, 26 went up to 3.28%. What was the driver of that? Approximately half of that amount, of that $2.5 million increase, was to finance the bond anticipated notes for the new high school. Let's go to page 12. All that is a graph of what I just said. It's a graph of what the previous slide spoke in numbers. This is a visual. Let's go to page 13. The maintenance of effort in education. Rhode Island general law requires the municipalities provide a minimum level of support for education on an annual basis. State law specifies that there are two possible ways to calculate the amount a city or town must provide or contribute to meet the maintenance of effort requirement for 1, the level funded amount of support as was provided in the prior year, or 2, if the district has a declining student population, an amount equal to what was provided per pupil in the previous year is allowable under Rhode Island general law if approved by the Rhode Island Department of Education. Let's go to page 14. Fiscal year 26-27 budget drivers. Where's our money going? And we'll get into that in more detail, but this is basically where it's going. 1, funding the debt obligations related to the new high school project, year 2 of bond anticipated notes, or commonly called BANs as an acronym. 2, the contractual obligations. The fiscal year 26-27 will require funding contractual obligations associated what will represent year 3 of the collective bargaining agreements with the NEA, Council 94, IAFF, and 2 years of contractual obligations with IBPO employees. Those are the unions that represent the town of its employees. 3, employee benefit costs, which have seen increases in health care of up to 8.75% on average over the last 3 fiscal years. It's currently unknown what that number will be as an increase in the fiscal year 26-27. 4, develop a plan to increase staffing levels for the emergency medical services, or EMS, personnel due to the planned new EMS station on Ministerial Road. And 5, the capital needs of the town. The town manager's proposed capital improvement plan calls for increased pay-as-you-go funding for fiscal year 26-27 of $94,496. Last year, we did pay-go of $1.986 million. This year, the proposal would be to raise it to $2.077. And just as is noted, Brian, the number that the directors put in for the increase was nearly $5 million, correct?
Just over $5 million, yes.
So we cut it down to $2 million. The directors came in at about $5 million in capital needs for the operations of the town, and we whittled it down to $2.077 million. It is not known at this time if any additional funding will be requested or needed to support the South Kingston School District. Just 2 days ago, I spoke to the superintendent, Mike Pedraza, trying to determine what would be needed, and he said it's too early to actually come up with what and if would be additional funds would be needed by the town to operate the South Kingston School District. Page 15. Turn it back over to Brian.
Thank you, Jim. This is revenue projections, very, very early, I might add, revenue projections for the next fiscal year. The current year levy, again, we plugged in there. That is the max available to the town. Once again, not what we're anticipating needing, but that is the maximum available to the town if we went to the 4% cap. The next line, prior year tax and interest, that is combined, the prior year taxes and interest. I think we have some growth there. I think we can grow that a bit next year. You're seeing an increase, proposed increase right now anyway, of $150,000. Same for payment in lieu of taxes. We've seen some growth in actuals in recent years. I think we have some room for growth. State revenue sources, the driver there has really been the hotel tax. The town will typically, the town budgets what the governor proposes within the budget for its state aid, and then some of those are driven by how many people go to the restaurants, how many hotel stays, and the town has done very well on hotel. The town really blew the state aid budget for hotel out of the water. So that, I think we have some room for growth on the hotel revenue. And finally, local revenue sources, building permits, the last few years has been up, and again, in FY25, it was considerably up. So again, I think we have some room for growth there. So very, very early at this time, revenue projections in terms of where I think we could go. And finally, that other funds transfer, that's an increase of $963,000. That is an early projection at this time for year 2 of the bond anticipation notes. So growing just under $1 million. One thing I did want to point out, again, in not needing the 4% cap, you see on the total on this page projected at just under $37 million. When you get to the next slide where we have projection on expenses, we're at 35.3. So again, that 4% cap is really just showing what we could potentially grab for tax revenue, not a need. So again, even on our expense projection, we're about 1.6 million under that. In terms of the expense projection right here, this is an early indication. So this is really taking the adopted budget from FY25-26 and applying union contracts and contractual obligations to those to the employees, as well as projections for early projections for healthcare and insurances. The one thing I will add on this, obviously, this is really looking solely at the the adopted budget from FY25-26. There have been employees that have left, and when we bring in new hires, typically they come in at a lower salary. So this, again, is kind of a top step. But also, I would caution, that's where I think this might be a fairly good estimate. I think the salary and benefits and things might be a little high on this projection, but also it doesn't reflect any new requests from departments on other things that maybe. So I think we're a little high in one area, we're a little low in the other. I think this is an early projection where we could be landing. Outstanding municipal debt. So this slide details the outstanding municipal debt on the books. I'm sorry, I'm on page 17. So the top section is the current municipal debt on the books. At the close, and these numbers here reflect at the end of the fiscal year. So at the close of the current fiscal year, the town will have $11.7 million on the books of that amount. And it's worth noting that that will decrease by $600,000 or 39% by the end of this 6-year plan. So it's going from 11.7 to 6.5. It's going down. Sorry, I'm on page 18. Sorry, I'm reading at the page top of 18. So it's going down roughly almost a half, about $5.5 million. Yeah, I was on 17. I was reading on 18. I went ahead on my sheet. 17, sorry. Yeah. So the outstanding debt on the books will be going down almost in half from 11.7 to 6.5 over this proposed capital plan. Then you'll see, obviously, in fiscal year '28 is when we anticipate the new high school bond going on the books. And that's where you see it jump from $10 million to roughly $160 million. And then again, it starts to decrease. But that is, again, the debt we have on the books. One thing I did want to note, the state treasury office, they put out I'm going to get the name wrong, a debt affordability study. It's worth noting there are 2 communities in the state that have zero debt. They were, I think, Exeter and Gloucester. There's one other community, I think it was Forster, at 0.01% of your operating revenues. South Kingston was next at 0.2%. So we again, I just wanted to highlight that. And looking at some of the things in this report, the town's ability to take on this debt. We were very, very low on our debt on the books at $10 million, and obviously we're going to see that number shoot up in fiscal year '28, but that was an interesting part of this report. Page 18. So the top section, entitled as municipal debt service, this again is our annual debt service, the debt service that is currently on the books. The top 2 portions, the town and school debt, are really the ones that we focus on, because the guild debt is funded by the guild fund, and the utility fund is funded by utilities. And actually, the utilities are making one interest payment this year, $59,000, and that will be paid off. So, and this is where you'll see, I was speaking a little ahead on the last slide, this is where you're seeing the annual payments on our current debt is going down about $600,000 over this 6-year plan, which obviously will help as we see the new debt ramp up the annual expenses. The middle section is the anticipated, first the bond anticipation notes for fiscal years 25, 26 through 28, and then the issuance of the actual bond. So 25, 26 is our current year 1 bands. That is an issuance of $55 million to cover construction of year 1 on the new high school. Projected right now for fiscal year 26, 27 is a $120 million issuance. That is rolling the first year of issuance of $55 million, and then taking an additional $65 million for year 2 of construction costs. And that is the projected at this point. I got a recent projection from our financial advisors, and on $120 million for 1 year, that would be the projected interest payment, the $3,051,000. The following year, year 3 bands, we're projecting right now at $150 million. That a slight increase at $3.3 million. It's slight because it is a smaller increase at $30 million, and also the bond will be issued during that year. So we will not be taking out that year 3 bands for the full year. It's a shorter term before we issue the actual bond itself. And then obviously in 28 and 29, you'll see the actual issuance of the bond. Those represent principal and interest payments of the bond, again, projected at this time. In the bottom section, these are offsetting revenue sources that we have to offset the debt payments. On the top line, the school housing aid, that is predominantly made up of reimbursements the town receives from the town for existing debt on the books, for school debt, excuse me. But we do also get reimbursements if the school performs any capital projects that are approved by RIDE within RIDE's approved project list. So that those for the next 3 years, that is what you're seeing there. It's essentially what's projected right now. We'll see what projects the schools get done, but this is based on anticipated revenue the town would be receiving based on the existing school debt on the books. And then you'll see the projected state aid reimbursements beginning in 28, 29 based on the issuance of the bond. Again, as noted, the next line, neighborhood guild, that is a 1-for-1. The guild fund covers the cost of their debt, so that's a 1-for-1 match, no cost to the town on that. The real estate conveyance, the next line, that is funds that are brought in by the real estate conveyance tax, and those funds have been covering existing open space bonds on the books. Next year will be the last year. There is 1 interest payment due next year, and then the all open space bonds will be paid in full, and that will be going away. And the council has had a prerogative to move those funds more toward an emphasis towards affordable housing. And obviously, once we get through FY '25, '26, there'll be more funding available to do so or move in another place. The next line, plan use of debt service fund balance. So within the soon-to-be-released audit as of 6/30/2025, the town will have $3,091,931 in the fund balance of the debt service fund. And it is the town's intention to use those funds to try and smooth the tax increases during the issuance process of the bond and the ramp-up of the bond costs. And that's where we did in the current fiscal year. You're seeing the use of $682,000, and we'll be proposing approximately $850,000 for the next fiscal year to again mitigate the increases in the cost of the bonds. The next line is the planned use of unassigned fund balance. This line totals between, over the course of 3 years, approximately 1.3, I think it's 1,350,000 over the course of 3 years. Again, with the idea being to try and smooth out these tax increases and try to smooth out the obligations on an annual basis. Just looking at it alone, when you have that debt issuance in 28, 29, you see the increase there from 3.3 million to 10.8. It's a substantial increase. So we're trying to smooth that out, find ways to smooth that out so we don't have, because there could have potentially been years where we were going to necessarily be near the cap. And we're trying to find avenues to smooth that out. So this is all part of that plan. And finally, planned use of BAN's investment income. This is I've been pretty excited to inform the council on this one. This has been a windfall for the town. So again, with the $55 million that the town issued in BANs, we've tried to invest that as best we can in secure. Obviously, we have it in CDs and higher interest accounts, trying to earn money on that before it goes out the door towards construction to utilize that money in future years to, again, try to smooth out these payments. And so far in the current fiscal year, the town has taken in over $700,000 in interest for the year one of the BANs. So you're seeing here, over the course of 3 years, the town utilizing $2 million. Again, it's very hard to judge this. We don't know where the interest rates are going. They're continually dropping. We have the CD. We have $20 million of the $55 million in a CD for another 11 weeks. The balance has been used up until now to fund the current construction. So obviously, I think once we get to the spring, you're going to see these expenses really start to ramp up. So, and the interest rates are only going down. So it's hard to project what we're going to have for interest. But we're at $700,000 now. I think we're playing it safe by, I'm assuming we're going to earn $1 million this year, and we're hoping to earn another $1 million next year off the $65 million. And this is where you're seeing that those $2 million spread over the course of 3 years, and again, an attempt to smooth out the issuance costs on the bond. You're effectively, the town is taking on about $7 million in debt for the bond, for the project, and as you're seeing here, we're trying to spread that out under $1 million over the 6-year, 7-year plan. So that's the hope of the town. The town went up about $1 million in the current fiscal year, and you'll see the bottom line, that total property tax need. Each year, we're trying to keep it under $1 million and try to isolate the tax need on an annual basis. Just using present value numbers, present value only, under $1 million, you're looking at 1.3 to 1.5% levy increase. So that we're saying levy increase approximately on an annual, for the next, as we roll this out, a need of maybe 1.3, 1.5 on the levy, and then whatever operational needs we'll have. But we're trying to smooth this out as best we can to not have a need for tax increases near the cap when the bond actually goes into effect. And then you're seeing in the final year, fiscal year 2031-32, at that point, the town is not utilizing any of the debt service fund, any unassigned fund balance, any investment income. At that point, it is fully rolled into the levy. You're seeing the bond payments at $10.8 million and the school housing aid coming in. So at that point, it is in the levy at that point, and we're trying to, again, smooth it out as best we can. So that's that slide. The unassigned fund balance. So the town has a policy to have an unassigned fund balance between 10 to 17% of operating revenues of the town. The GFOA recommends a minimum of 2 months or a minimum of 16.67% of operating revenues. And I thought this one was interesting. So another study that, for anyone not in finance, would probably use this as a means of falling asleep, but I thought it was interesting. The Auditor General put out a municipal financial trend report that looks at the audit of all municipal cities and towns in Rhode Island based on the fiscal year 2024 audit, with the exception of Little Compton and East Providence. They didn't get their audit. Well, East Providence goes on the federal audit, federal fiscal year, and Little Compton, I guess they didn't get their audit done on time. But with the exception of those towns, they look at different things and they compare the towns, which is pretty interesting. But this is looking at, they had one ratio they had in there was total fund balance of the town. So not just the unassigned, but total fund balance of the town as a percentage of operating expenses and other revenue financing sources. The town of South Kingston's percentage was 21.1%. The state average for the state of Rhode Island among all cities and towns was 21.1, and Washington County communities was 22.61. So again, I just wanted, that I thought was a good highlight that we are in line. It's a year old at this point as of fiscal year 2024, but we're in line with our neighbors and within the state. And I thought that was a nice point to add. Page 20. This is the unassigned fund balance projected. Again, I think I'm pretty confident with the audit. It's in a good place. I haven't seen any new drafts come up recently, so I think this is going to land, but you're seeing at the top, this is as of the most recent audit, the unassigned fund balance was $16.7 million, which equated to 18.46% of operating revenues. The projected fund balance for the upcoming audit, June 30th, 2025, is $18,061,190. Below, you're seeing the what make up operating revenues. So that is the actual adopted general fund budget and all of the various transfers out that the general fund is responsible for. So that the operating revenues of the town equate to $93.3 million, and that percentage is 19.36%. The one thing I wanted to add, again, we were looking to potentially utilize, on page 21, utilize 1.3 million of the fund balance during this rollout plan of the bond. If we were to equate that in present value dollars, we're not looking to move that money now, or the council could, into the debt service, but that would lower that percentage to 17.91. And that is all.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for council members?
So, Brian, you were talking about the band's investment income, and I just had a question about that. So is this related to when the bond council woman came in? And so I'm going to just say this, and you can tell me if I'm saying it correctly. So basically, because our town had such good credit, we received basically cash back at closing. I know there's like another way to say that, but basically we were able to take that like 1% or whatever it was and then invest it for a certain number of months. And is this where the money came from that you're really excited about the income? Because when you get very excited about something, I always take note.
Okay. The town did do very well in terms of its interest rate, which, yes, bond counsel Karen Grandy noted, and that we were paying a lower interest rate, and we did receive some funds back because of that. The interest that we received so far this year, that over $700,000, that I have to tip my hat also to the deputy finance director. She's on the funds regularly, and she will beat up the banks. If one bank has got a higher interest rate than the other, she's making the call. And we do have some, as I mentioned, we have some of the funds in a very short-term CD trying to maintain as much interest as we can on these funds, to earn as much interest before these funds go out the door to cover the expenses of the project. So we're trying to make this money work for the town, and yeah, so I think that is working so far.
I really appreciate your diligence in trying to find ways to stretch our money and basically make the money work for us. And so that is one really important thing about having a generous fund balance and good credit, and it really is to our advantage. Thank you.
Brian, I got a few questions for you related to the bands.
Yes.
I just want to clarify. So there's 3 bands. One's a 3-year, one's a 2-year, one's a 1-year?
Well, we did a 1 year for 55 million. We'd be looking to do, year 2 would be 120 million, which would be.
Is that year 2 a 1-year?
That would be, all the bands are 1 year, yes.
Okay, so-
So we'd be looking to roll that first year at 55 million for a second year, but we'd be doing it again as a 1 year. And we'd be taking out additional funds to cover then the second year of construction.
So the first band is 55 million.
Yes.
The second is 65.
But the total for year 2 was 120, because we'd be rolling that 55 with the 65.
But the first year band is, maturity is 12 months,
Yes,
but you're going to roll it into another year? Are you going to
Yes.
use the proceeds from band number 2 to pay back band number 1?
we wouldn't have any, if we did, we'd only have 15 million for construction at that point. If we're
So you can't
taking
do
out-
that?
No.
So how do you effectively turn a 1-year band into a 2-year band?
We just roll it, you're able to roll that band. So instead of, so the bands are only 1-year terms, but we can roll it for another year. As long as we have the full backing of, again, the town has the full backing of this bond has been issued, the project is underway, the investors know that the town will be issuing this debt, and these bands will be paid in full. That's,
Now, to get a more of a sense of, you get the proceeds from the bands, and then over time, that money's expended toward the construction of the school project.
yes,
Now, that, I guess, amount in the account, which is sort of depleted over time, not depleted all at once, allows you to invest it and earn interest income, which is already what you had described there.
yes.
Now, how long, I guess, how much is depleted over time to essentially allow us to use this strategy to invest in short-term interest accruing accounts, allowing us to get revenue?
That's the $1 million question. I mean,
But you've used that strategy
yes,
so far.
Yes,
So you're-
it's been a little easier so far. With the construction is obviously just ramping up. I think, again, in discussions with the building committee and things, like, the construction's really gonna ramp up, I think, in the spring, and you're gonna see the money start to go out the door faster. So, I don't think, and then at that point, where will the rates be at that point? So we're trying to earn it as much as we can now.
So it's likely the most income generated on those accounts, use of the proceeds to invest, to earn interest, is sort of in the earlier stages of the project
Yes.
rather than later?
Yes,
Okay. And just to kind of talk this through, after the bands or the money for the project from the bands is expended, you issue the bonds, use the bond proceeds to pay back the bands, then we pay back the bondholders over the length of the bond, which is 20 years. Okay. Another question I have, just want to clarify, on slide 15, you talked a little bit about state and local revenues. You said that we're experiencing an increase in revenue from those sources.
yes.
Now, is that just sort of a trend that we're seeing over time, or we're just seeing it this 1 year?
So the state provides revenue numbers for the cities and towns, but some of those revenue sources depend on usage. Like, the one that has really exceeded budget has been the hotel tax. And they gave us a budget based on projections, and South Kingston's done well, I guess, on in terms of the hotel tax. And we've taken in a lot more than the state had initially projected when the budget was adopted.
Now, not just the hotel tax, but we're also, we're a big tourist town, so we get a lot of, restaurant
Yep.
tourism coming into
That's a
town,
different
summer
revenue
months,
source,
spring.
yeah.
So
Yep.
meals and beverage tax, I'm thinking.
Yep, that's up, not as much. I mean, that did meet budget and slightly exceed, but hotel was way over.
Are those the main pass-through taxes that we'll receive from the state?
Yes, others are known. Like, what we receive for the tangible, that's a set number. What we receive from motor vehicle, that's a set number. Payment in lieu of taxes from the state, set number. But those are variables based on usage, yes.
And then permits, I mean, we're seeing an
Yes.
uptick in that?
Absolutely.
Likely related to increased development and housing across
Yes.
town?
Yes.
Okay. One other thought, going back to the bands and the interest income. What sort of assumptions did you put into trying to figure out what revenue that we're going to generate over the length of the time that we can invest these bands. Like you mentioned, we at least anticipate receiving $2 million over the next 3 years.
That's the hope.
And what sort of assumptions did you use to come to that conclusion? That we'll likely, at a minimum, I'm guessing conservatively, that we will generate income of $2 million over those 3 years.
Well, it's, the $700,000 is only through 4 months. That does not include November at this time. That's 4 months of the year that we took in over $700,000. So, yes, the money's gonna start going out the door and the interest rates are coming down, but we have 8 months to earn another $300,000.
So I mean, is that just like a $2 million seems low, so I'm putting it in this presentation? Or did you actually use some sort of assumption to come to that amount?
I'm hoping it's a conservative number and we earn more than $2 million, to be honest with you, but I'm trying to be conservative with it because how quickly the funds go out the door and where the interest rates go are variables.
Okay.
But yes, I am hoping it's a conservative number.
Brian, thank you for the summary tonight, and thank you to you and your deputy for making the most of our tax dollars. I'm on page 8, the CIF funding summary. Would PAYGO be coming into this, or when is the town going to be receiving PAYGO funds from the town?
The town council will be taking up a vote on the CIP at the last meeting in January, and they will be voting on the CIP funding that will then appear in next year's budget. So what's proposed by the town manager's budget is that $2,077,000.
Okay, so PAYGO is not in your presentation, the money coming in from the bond payments, right?
No, that's separate separate from the capital.
And the PAYGO that we're receiving back is 52 cents on the dollar, is that correct? No? You can talk on the mic, it's okay.
I think what you're talking about is there was a vote for PAYGO funds from the state as part of the school
Yes.
building project.
I forgot about that.
Brian's talking about a
Yes,
different
I forgot about that.
Gotcha.
CIP PAYGO.
But just in general, that wouldn't be in this?
No, that's separate and apart.
Gotcha, so we're going to be spending the PAYGO money right back onto the bond payments, right?
Yes,
Okay, just for clarity, thank you.
yes.
Brian, one more question. Slide 21, it's really slide 20 and 21, kind of working in tandem here. You show us the projected unassigned fund balance as a percentage of the budget. Obviously, as we compare audited fiscal year 24-25 to what we project for 25-26, it's going to be more favorable over time. And you outline, looks like a recommendation as to a potential use of unassigned fund balance. I guess to the result of this recommendation on slide 21 would be a reduction in the tax increase to taxpayers related to carrying the debt service. Is that right?
This ties back into, I'm sorry, I'm going to switch a few slides on you. This goes back to, so that $1,350,000, that goes back to the bottom line there, the planned use, I'm sorry, second from the bottom, planned use of unassigned fund balance. Those 3 years, I'm sorry, on page 18, thank you. That goes back into, those 3 years combined is the $1,350,000. So that's part of that smoothing process.
Yeah, but slide 21 is as a percentage as of year-end 25-26.
Yes,
Slide
it's-
18 takes into account 28-29, 29-30, and 30-31.
That's saying if the transfer would have happened now. The transfer doesn't have to happen now. But
Okay.
if that transfer to the debt service fund would happen now, that would be what would the impact?
So transfer to the fund now, actually apply it over a 3-year period.
Yeah, that, just showing you what the percentage would be with the impact if that were to happen. Not saying it would happen now or it has to happen. That's up to the council.
Thank you.
Couple of things. On page 7, with respect to the CIP total projection costs, you've got the years going forward. It would be helpful for next month when we do the CIP sessions to have historical data, 23 forward.
I brought that back. I brought that with me in hard copy, so okay. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
It's worth noting, the adopted CIP from last year Year 2 of that plan called for funding for capital projects for now what is the current year of about $3.3 million. So again, the town manager's proposal is coming in at just over $2 million, so that was been reduced further.
Okay. On page 10, can you just give us a quick definition where you've got overlay and abatements and the figures that are in red?
Sure. So on an annual basis, the town has to assume we're not going to collect 100% of our tax revenue. We do a good job with collecting taxes, but you have to wait a few years before you can send them to tax sale, and when those revenues are brought in, those are prior year taxes. That's that prior year taxes or interest columns. This is saying we're assuming we're not going to collect 100% of our tax revenue when the bills go out. And we also have, obviously, the other side of that is abatements, as abatements go before the council on a regular basis. So taxes do get abated. So that line accounts for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Can we go back to the use of the unassigned fund balance of 1.35? And could you just explain why you're pushing out use of it into 28, 29, and 30? Because we do use it as part of, some percentage comes into the annual operating budget, so.
Yeah, and this is actually above and beyond that. This would be moving use of fund balance into the debt service fund to cover the debt service payments. And why those years? That's, again, if you look in fiscal year 28, 29, on page 18, we have 1.5 million use of fund balance, 350,000 for unassigned fund balance, and 680 for the use of bands. That's that first year of the actual debt service payments, and it's, you're seeing the bill jump. Debt service is going from 4.5 million to 11.9 million, so we're trying to mitigate that as much as possible, and that's where you're seeing at the bottom of the screen that property tax need. We're trying to keep that under $1 million to smooth that out and not have any large years of large need for large tax increase years.
So if I'm following you correctly, fiscal year 29, you have planned use of debt service 1.5, unassigned fund balance 350, and then planned use of bands. That's about $2 million, rough adding, right? And the debt service that year is 12 million.
Yes.
Right? So the delta is 10 million, and the housing aid reimbursement coming back from RIDE would be 4. So we're still going to have to come up with $6 million in revenue that year or
No,
6 million?
well, so that second from the bottom line, projected annual debt obligations, those amounts are what's rolled into the tax levy. So in this year, you're at 2.3 million. Next year, that would be going up 960,000 to 3.2 million. The following year, we'd be looking to increase that by 965,000 to 4.2 million. That year, when the bond gets issued, because we're using so many other revenue sources, it's going up just under 960,000 to 5.2 million. So we're trying to gradually increase the obligations on the tax levy related to debt service. Basically phasing in that $7 million over a 6-7 year period.
Right. I think I understand what you're answering, but there's still a lot of revenue that we need to come up with, because all this little, you're nodding, right? Right? Because we're going to get some investment income, we're going to do some from the unassigned fund balance, but ultimately the majority is going to come from the community each year to.
Well, it would be going up about just under $1 million each year as you phase it in. That's where, and then when you get into fiscal year 2031, 32, it would be fully rolled in. At that point, after you see the growth of just under $1 million each year, at that point, that's where you see there is no new revenue sources, those other revenue sources coming in. It is, the debt is there and the state aid is there, and that has been rolled into the tax levy at that point. Yeah.
Can we go back to look at it again?
Okay.
So if we could just look at fiscal year 28, 29. the debt that we would owe is 10,804,000, correct?
Well, the total debt, that's the new debt. Total, when you add in the debt that the town has up top, that existing debt, so the total debt in that year is 11.9 million. That total debt service line,
Right, but the school part is 10.8.
that's the new, yes,
Okay.
correct.
And so that's the mortgage payment.
Yes.
What does the total sources of revenue, income, whatever it is, to make the mortgage payment come from? It's the lower half, right?
Yes.
4,067,000.
Well, at that point, so within the year before, within fiscal year 28, 29, we would have had within the levy $4.2 million rolled into the levy related to the debt service. And that year, we would be increasing the debt service on the levy by $950,000. And then, yes, you have those other revenue sources. That all combined is how we would get up to leveling off the obligations that year.
If I'm not following you, I'm sure most people are not following you. I'm going to look to the accountant.
So, Brian, to try to help add clarity here, so when you get to 28, 29, you see the increase in the debt service, right? The 10.8 million, that's just that one line item there related to debt service. That's when you get to the total debt service, about 11.9.
Yes.
Starts to taper off every year thereafter. But I can see in the rows underneath the revenue offsets.
Yes.
That's where we're really starting to apply the unassigned fund balance or the debt service fund balance to really reduce the net total payment for the debt service.
Yes.
Such that it's not equal each year, but fairly similar in amount.
Yes.
Allowing us to sort of keep the increase in tax related to that at a fairly similar rate over time.
Yes. The goal is to level it out. So for 29, again, looking at that 11.9 number, a $12 million number, if you go to the bottom line, that projected annual debt obligations in fiscal year 28, that amount is what was in the levy for the year prior. That's $4.2 million. We're using revenue offsets of $6.7 million, so that's going to get you to just under 11 million. And then the delta is that 950,000 that we'd have to rely on the levy to make up the difference. So that's where. How we
That
got
makes
there.
sense?
So in fiscal year 25, 26, I'm just confused on how much of an increase we're going to need to pass on to the community. So it looks like
That would be that bottom line.
$1 million.
Yes,
The
just
first,
under.
a million, I'm going 1.1, then it's 1.111.
The bottom row in blue.
Yeah. the
Total property tax need.
The dark blue,
Yes, total property tax need.
962?
Yes.
Is that where you're looking? I see. Additionally,
That's the growth each year on the tax levy.
it's previous year plus
Yes,
900.
correct.
Previous
It
year,
rolls in each year.
okay,
Yes.
wow. Okay.
All right,
you.
any questions from council member? Go ahead, Mike.
One more for Brian or maybe Jim. With respect to page 14, the reference to the new EMS station, when is that expected to come online?
It's going to be in the spring of '26.
All right, I recall in last year's budget discussions, we added 2 positions so that there were people sufficiently trained for when it does come on.
Right.
In March of '26, are we hiring more?
Well, what we're working on a plan right now where we will hire just enough people for the peak hours to kind of level us off more than what we're doing. So we're still working on that plan. I think it is 2 more that we're going to hire. But so you'll see in the off-peak hours, one of the stations, whatever one we designate as the least busy, will, for example, the midnight to 8 shift or the whatever.
And we included funds for that period, March to June 30, 26, in the current budget as well. Is that right?
2 personnel in the current year.
Okay, and that's going to cover us for the period March through June?
Yes.
That's what I wanted to clarify. I do have some more questions, but it's more directed towards the school department on their part of this. Give me a second. With respect to the discussion of maintenance of effort, where do we stand with respect to current enrollment? Have we flattened out, or is it still in decline?
We are still in a decline, however, it is at historic lows. It is what was expected at 3.2, and you'll see this in the presentation, is about 1.8 this year. So we actually have 40 more students in the district than anticipated based off of NESDEC projections last year, and that's in addition to still seeing some increases in enrollment at the charter and state school level.
And that actually anticipated my next question, which is, what does our latest NESDEC report say with respect to next year?
Certainly. If you have the presentation digitally, I did embed it, a link
Okay.
to this year's NESDEC report. It's full NESDEC report, and I present extensively on enrollment in our presentation. But if you want the full NESDEC report for this current school year, it is linked in the digital copy as well.
Okay.
I can provide it for you as well.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Do you also have stats with respect to numbers on homeschooling?
We have those at the ready. They are not embedded in homeschool. We
Yeah,
did not embed into, as the financial implications currently are not what we see in terms of other schools.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, we
This
haven't.
is the start of the discussion.
Absolutely.
But same as we did last year in the budget process, the numbers of students that we have homeschooling, charter schools,
We have-
out of district, and what it costs us with respect to those students. Because
Yep.
as we've all had to learn, the money follows the student. The state aid that comes to us is merely a pass-through, and we wind up sending it to other districts.
We will address that extensively.
Okay. Another thing, again, not for tonight necessarily, but what we didn't have in the last budget process in early '25 was the final report with respect to the equity audit. And one of the things I'd like to hear about as we go through this process is where the school department is making any changes with respect to, and fiscal impacts with respect to the changes that are called for in that audit, and how the school department, the school committee are handling that aspect. And I think that's it on that. One point I wanted to make, this isn't for you, Michael, as much as Brian, but on page 17, just so that it's out there for anybody who's following along, the projection for the new school debt is listed at the full 150 that is budgeted, but the last report we got from our manager was that it's at 141, I believe.
Yeah, until we issue the bond, I'm just making the
Yeah,
assumption that
I understand the need
Yep.
to assume
Yep.
the full amount, but I wanted to point out for the public's benefit that the last report we got was the cost was at 141. Thank you.
So, Brian, I just had some questions about the EMS billing fund. Is that the billing for the community paramedic program, or?
It's not. That is the funds that the town takes in for emergency runs for just non-residents, I believe. And that's a lot of Medicare billing, and then the insurance company billing, but not that program, no. That's some separate and apart.
Do we have any figures on what that contributes, or will that maybe be coming later?
EMS billing or?
Really, what I'm trying to understand is the community paramedic program specifically, and also hoping that we're going to see that that program expand and the revenue from that, become more substantial. And, if we're sort of working towards that, if there's something we might need to do to help that along. And I understand that I might be like off kilter with this question, but I just sort of want to make sure that we're pursuing that. And then the other thing that I just wanted to bring up for the rest of the council to consider, and again, I'm not really sure that this is the right time to do this, but for the CIP, thinking about the needs that we're going to have in our community over the next few years, I think one of the biggest is going to be improving our water infrastructure. And so I don't want to be at the mercy of, an outside company. So I would like us to maybe think about expanding our thoughts about putting some money aside for our water system. This, sort of, I don't know what we need to do, but we're going to need cash to do it, so.
All right, any other thoughts from council members? All right, thank you, Brian, thank you, Jim. Now I'm going to hand it over to Superintendent Pedraza for a presentation from the school department.
And as we wait for this to come on up, I will get started with my opening remarks. So good evening, Council President McEntee, honorable members of the Town Council, School Committee Chair Vetter, honorable members of the School Committee, Town Manager Manny, and valued community members of South Kingstown. It is an honor to be here once again before you this evening. Over the past 18 months, I've had the privilege of working alongside dedicated educators, engaged families, collaborative municipal leaders, and a community that deeply values public education. Together, we are building a foundation of stability, responsible stewardship, and remaining responsive to the evolving needs of our students and community. As we open the FY27 budget season with this meeting, I want to reaffirm that our approach remains grounded in the same three principles we shared with you last year: stability, stewardship, and responsiveness. But we will also add one more that is essential and is foundational to the district's recently adopted new mission, that of partnership. So while stability means continuing to provide consistent, reliable educational experiences for every student in our care, from our youngest learners in pre-K to our graduating seniors and to our students in our transition academy, it means maintaining the progress we've made together while thoroughly addressing the challenges that lay ahead. Stewardship reflects our unwavering commitment to honoring the trust the taxpayers place in us. Every dollar we discuss tonight, we know represents an investment by South Kingstown taxpayers, an investment we take seriously. Responsiveness is our promise to remain data-informed and strategically adaptive. It means listening to the community, responding to student needs, addressing enrollment trends, and aligning our resources with the district's mission and new strategic priorities. Partnership, though, is the cornerstone upon which everything else rests. Our district mission explicitly states, and the community members were adamant, that it states, in partnership with the community, our students will thrive. This is not merely aspirational language. It is a commitment to the genuine collaboration. Partnership means recognizing that the success of our schools depends on the collective investment, engagement, and shared vision of all of our stakeholders, including our educators, families, municipal leadership, community organization, and residents, some of whom are in the audience tonight. It means continuing to work side by side, as we are currently doing, from the construction of our new high school and Curtis Corner fields to the coordination of our facilities, emergency services, and capital planning. It is reflected in the school departments adopting shared platforms like ClearGov to increase transparency and accountability. It means listening to student and family voices in our decision-making as outlined in our evolving strategic plan. Through partnership, we are stronger together. Tonight, we have a clear goal, and that is to share with you the considerations, trends, and priorities from the current school year that will shape our FY27 budget proposal in the days, weeks, and months ahead. We will be sure to pause at various transition points of this presentation for any questions that may arise. On behalf of the entire South Kingstown School Department and School Committee, I look forward to our continued collaboration as we work together to support academic excellence and nurture every student's potential and ensure that each and every one of our schools remains a source of pride for the entire South Kingstown community. As we begin the formal presentation, I would also like to use this as an opportunity to introduce to the community the district's new Chief Financial Officer, Mrs. Patricia Proctor, and also acknowledge Assistant Superintendent Mr. Daniel Seeger, who is with me tonight. So without further ado, next slide, please. So in terms of our agenda in this presentation, it does follow the last year's agenda, but does so in a little bit different way. We didn't want to keep on going over things that have gone over time and time again. However, again, we are happy to revisit things that may have come up in the past and answer them the best that we can. The mission and vision of tonight's presentation, key considerations that are coming to light in FY27. We will discuss enrollment, both projected, current, and ongoing. We'll talk about this year's staffing, this year's revenue, and this year's expenditures, as well as then take any general questions. Next slide, please. What you have before you, as I referenced in my opening remarks, is the district's new mission statement, as well as in there you see our core beliefs about teaching and learning. But also I would say is that in terms of Thrive and that trust, high expectations, respect, inclusion, voice, and equity, that extends beyond the classroom. It extends to every office. It extends to every adult. It extends to how we all go about our work, whether it's with children or with members of the community, whether it's in our office or with others. Next slide. And you'll see that come up in time and time again, as it did for those who were able to attend the wonderful groundbreaking ceremony that we had for the high school. So I had alluded to these before, the continue building on progress in terms of stability. We're starting to see student cohorts at all grade levels start to become relatively stable, especially compared to the past 6 years. We have stable leadership at the school and district level, and we also are working on our new 5-year strategic plan, which will provide stability of mission and goals for years to come. In terms of stewardship, again, we know that all dollars are taxpayer dollars. We have an obligation to those who in the community who have children or grandchildren in the system, and those who do not, and that takes the balancing of priorities. However, we must remain responsive. Again, the class of 2038 is our kindergarten class of this school year. So next year we'll be welcoming in the class of 2039. So as we think about that responsiveness is as we talk about this going across multiple school years, and we talk about the new high school going up, that is going to be an old school for those of our kindergarten, for the class of 2038. They are here, and that investment is going to be well used. Next slide, please. As I alluded to before, continue to build on our progress of partnership. Here, what you have before you on this slide are just some of the school, or what we see as school and municipal partnerships, whether it be, again, the new construction, the turning over of Wakefield Elementary School, the sharing of offices and facilities at Asa Pond Road, the use of emergency services, whether it be through school events or whether it be through emergency planning and safety teams. The recent turning over of 300 Columbia to the town, coordination again with Parks, Rec, DPW as we go about projects, as we get ready for this, or are full into this winter season. And then, as I alluded to, and you'll hear more about as we go into the CIP portion, we did adopt ClearGov at the direction of Mrs. Proctor, something that the district had never done before. This will allow us to directly input into the system so that the town, we don't need to transfer our CIP requests or approved pieces. We can do it directly, and we don't need to send it to the town to have the town do it. We'll get access to the ClearGov, and we'll do it ourselves, taking that burden and sharing it across all stakeholders. And then in our capital plan, what you'll see is that we have, that we will make sure that in our capital plan that we're prioritizing reimbursable projects. So where the town receives the housing aid reimbursement. While we can't and we need to use that CIP for things that come up, like for example this school year, unfortunately we've had a problem with a boiler at the high school. We have to fix it. We can't not have heat. However, in every other aspect that we're looking to do in major projects center around warm, safe, and dry, and are reimbursable at the state rate. Next slide, please. In terms of upcoming major considerations that are going into our FY27 request or will go through, although I had talked about last time, when here about exactly a year ago, there are 154 of underfunded or unfunded mandates for federal and state to varying degrees of fiscal impact. All indications from RIDE is that Rhode Island General Law 162232, which has been in effect for quite some time, and I'm sure previous administrations have talked about high quality curricular materials that we must purchase in mathematics and ELA, and that those are considerable cost drivers. All indications is that science, which is part of that approved legislation, which has been on the books and was supposed to be purchased 2 years ago, has been pushed out. We do not believe, or every indication is it will not be pushed out again. I bring this up because science curriculum is a different curriculum than especially mathematics, where with science we're talking about consumables, and when we start talking about consumables, we're talking about reoccurring costs year after year after year. And so I want to make sure that folks are ready for that, as well as this may be a phased-in required implementation throughout fiscal year 27 and 28 as those materials become available and get phased in. So that's the best that we're hoping for, is that the state will allow us to phase it in over 2 years. Also, the district has contractual obligations in terms of our educational support professionals contract is up this year. That is our second largest bargaining unit and consists generally of administrative support, classroom paraprofessionals, one-on-one job coaches, and computer technicians are found within that bargaining unit. As was alluded to previously, transportation is also up. This is a big one for the town of South Kingstown. Again, we are the second largest by land mass, second only to Coventry, but we do not have neighborhood schools any longer, or in terms of walkable, and are very limited. So our transportation costs in South Kingstown are going to be different. They're going to be elevated with 5 schools and spread out. So that contract is up. And last but not least, because it would affect every single student in every single school, our food service contract is also up. We are waiting. That is generally based off of the state food contract. That is also up, and they have not yet put theirs out to bid. Essentially what happens with that is that the statewide contract goes up. Based on the statewide contract, we see certain parameters and can tweak that to reflect our community's wants and needs, and then we'll get figures. But again, it is something that goes across all schools, and so wanted to put it in there. And last but not least, and then hopefully in future years will become first, the district's priorities and goals that are evolving with the new strategic plan. Next slide, please. Well, actually, I'll pause there to see if there are any questions about any of those major considerations for FY27.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say for everyone here, in the spring and again in the fall, we unanimously passed a resolution that's been forwarded to the State House to include transportation in the funding formula. I don't know if you've done something similar or you would like to. We did it in the spring. If you recall, it was late in the session, so we wanted to get ahead of them this time and do it so that maybe we could make some momentum and advocacy, just putting that out for everyone, because I do know transportation is $4 or $5 million back of the napkin, and it's only going to be more painful. So anything we want to do as a collective before January session starts is great. So looking at you too.
In general, too, just for anybody that is watching and maybe in need of a job or a different direction in life, I think that there's going to be a lot more need for CDL drivers because a lot of the buses will be becoming smaller. So if you're looking for something to do in the next few months, I think getting a license would be a really good way to go.
Along those lines, and I was remiss in holding this off, something that we are doing this academic year and are taking advantage of is the state did put out a statewide RFP for a third service provider to come on in to every district who wanted to avail themselves of it in order to audit existing bus routes. And this is something we're taking advantage of. That began on December 8th. We have not yet received that final report, but it is something with each right now, full-size bus running at $100,000 a bus. It is something that we are then using that outside source to validate existing routes and can then use next year in terms of whether it be in negotiations or whether it be in vetting routes with our current or new vendor.
Superintendent, you said that our food service contract is ending in 2026?
It is. That is correct.
And you're looking to have a renewal of that contract, or you're waiting for the state?
We're waiting for the state in order to put it out to bid so that all vendors.
Is it currently right now Aramark? Who is our?
It is currently Chartwells.
Chartwells. Okay. Thank you.
Superintendent, with respect to the reference to federal funding uncertainty, can you expand on that a little bit?
Thank you. I got so excited about the strategic plan piece, I jumped over the federal funding uncertainty. So some of the angst that obviously we've experienced already this fiscal year when we thought finances were in place, we've been given no indication whatsoever. So we continue to have some federal funding uncertainty. So even though our Medicaid services, Medicaid reimbursement is back on there, in terms of how the administration now wants it all presented, so as we're filing and get ready to do our reimbursements, we give that to a third-party provider. They've said to us, put it on hold because we don't even know how they're going to want to receive it all. And so while there are dollars that are out there moving forward into the next fiscal year and what items, Title I for high-poverty schools, Title II for professional development, Title III for language, and Title IV for safe schools, as well as IDEA for disabilities and preschool, we have no indication whatsoever of what those funding levels will be. Currently, in terms of the biggest financial impact in terms of federal grants, in terms of individuals, would be both Title I and IDEA.
Approximately how much do we receive in the current fiscal year in federal funds?
We are currently set to receive, it is on on our revenue slide, but at one point, I want to say it's 1.77 million.
Okay.
Of which most most if not all is restricted.
One other question with respect to your item 8 on the continue building on the capital plan. When you talk about prioritizing reimbursable projects under the state housing aid, I just want to make sure that I understand. Are you talking about the projects that were listed as part of our Phase 2 application that was approved by RIDE in December of 23?
Going back to that list in 2022 of the RIDE that they gave us an entire list of the projects that are available that are eligible for housing aid. We've made sure that those are in the CIP, one, because we know that we won't be able to get to all of them, and should they become available, as well as making sure that, again, in 2 years, actually by the end of this year, it's time to start that process all over again, because as that plan indicates, in 2 years, that facilities master plan that we need to submit to RIDE is outdated. It expires essentially, but those projects have not. And so because we are looking to put those in order to memorialize the need that those projects still exist.
And these are projects that RIDE already approved back in December of '23.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And once again, in '24, that was received at the end of the year, came back with another report and gave us some additional pieces. But again, we'll have a full accounting of those on our CIP. Yes, sir.
I'd like to understand the federal dollars for the school lunch program. Like, how much did we receive this past year? And do we have any ideas whether we'll be getting that money from the federal government for free and reduced lunches or any of that?
In terms of this that year, they did put a gavel down on those dollars. However, in terms of we've received no indication of what they're looking to put in or not put in next fiscal year in FY27. Hence, the assumptions that we make right now are truly assumptions.
So, but this past year, how much did we get from the federal government?
Yep.
Was it?
Yep. $710,000.
Okay, so right now, so last year, we got 710,000, but we're not really sure what's going to be happening going
Correct.
forward, except we know that the kids will need to eat.
That is correct.
Quick question, Superintendent. Going back to Council Vice President Marin was saying on the use of sort of CIP or unassigned fund balance monies toward CIP projects,
Yes, sir.
sort of to get the reimbursement. I know an outstanding question, and I think we addressed it last budget season, but it wasn't entirely clear. How soon after investment is made to an identified CIP project do we receive reimbursement from the state?
The state, and Mr. Sylvia, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the state gives back twice a year, April and October. Thank you, Mr. Proctor.
And the amount by which they give us in reimbursement is based on the amount we give them in invoices? How would they determine the amount in reimbursement as of a certain day to pay the town? Like, is that,
So
like if a
if
project
it's
is
an approved-
outstanding,
yep,
let's
yep.
say hypothetical,
Yep.
something costs $1 million.
Yep, 30%.
That date comes, we've spent $500,000 on it. Project's not completed. I don't know if that's a requirement or not, whether to receive reimbursement.
It is.
It is.
It is substantial completion, hence what caused this year's or our last fiscal year, that when we did not meet our 3% maintenance of effort, was because the $400,000 project of the West Kingston parking lot was not substantially complete as of June 30th. We couldn't file for it, putting us under the maintenance of effort, which then the state, and I believe this was addressed at prior meetings, withheld that state aid and is set to be released as those projects are substantially complete.
Substantial completion is meaning within the discretion of RIDE as to what meets that criteria? What is substantial completion for purposes of receiving reimbursement from RIDE for these projects?
My understanding is that it would be where you are beyond you're in at the very least at the punch list phase, if you will, that it is essentially they're ready to walk away, and ultimately, besides finishing, removing materials that are not being part of the project and having contractors off-site, except for spot checks or to finish up, I'm trying to think of the word, finishing touches, if you will, on the project is substantially complete. Essentially, they've ended, and we could be operating operating schools, and that project would be done.
Now, is it even possible, or I guess practical or feasible, to sort of front-load those CIP projects that were identified in the RIDE application, which sort of have sort of short duration of time to complete, such that we could front-load those, maximize our reimbursement sort of up front, allowing sort of a train, so to speak, of allowing us to reinvest more of the reimbursement from the CIP projects?
That's exactly what we're trying to do, and as well as get that done. And so you'll see, again, on the list, or you might have it already, is in terms of things such as HVAC units that need to get taken care of, as well as roofs. That tends to be most of our capital improvement projects. They're the most in need. However, we have to put in the HVAC units first to make sure that we're not voiding warranties on roofs by all of a sudden putting up new roofs and then having HVAC units that then need to be put in and then put all around. But again, that warm, safe, and dry aspect of it, as well as then anything else that needs, should the need arise. But as the school year goes on and the need arise, it might count towards our 3%. For example, when a boiler in the high school went down, we still have to provide heat. Fortunately, the part that we can put in can be, upon demolition, can be used in other existing boiler systems throughout the district. But that came in. It does go towards maintenance of effort, but it is not an approved ride reimbursement. So we're still paying for it out of our capital expenses, but it is not reimbursable at that 30% rate.
So if we do decide to use town monies to invest toward these CIP projects that are identified in the RAD application, you'll walk us through the most strategic way and the best way to do this over time, sort of with an interest in doing those short-term duration projects up front to maximize our reimbursement received earlier on.
Absolutely, because additionally, in terms of, we're ready to think about, in terms of thinking about this, how are we also going to then pay for some of the systems that are also coming online? So, as we pay for at least the school's portion of the CIP coming out of fund balance, that's fund balance that ultimately the school department has, and when we pay for it, 30% goes back to the town general fund. And so can we get to a point where, as we put in artificial fields, as we have a new high school, can we get to a point where, if we are spending capital funds out, or we are spending CIP out of fund balance, can we put that reimbursement back into a restricted fund, which would then get us quicker to some of those bigger projects, as well as potentially pay for the long term? So when a turf field needs to be replaced in 10 years, those funds are sitting in there over time and can be rolled in and don't need to come out of an operating budget or out of fund balance. They're in a restricted capital improvement fund.
Thank you.
Superintendent, from your perspective,
Yes, sir.
which budget drivers this year are most directly tied to student outcomes, and which are more about maintaining the existing systems or status quo?
Well, so although I put it forward as a cost consideration, in terms of moving forward and having students become re-engaged or engaged more deeply with science, I see that as an opportunity. I see that, in terms of constantly focusing on math and ELA leaves a level of critical thinking of where the answers aren't there, where it's not just about writing. So I am excited about some of the changes and the way science is now being taught. And so I see that as one of the biggest positive drivers. I also see, in terms of our educational support professionals, the work that they do every single day is essential to the teaching and learning that goes on. And that's even if it is things that people think are unappreciative, such as playground, the conflict resolution and the education that goes on in the playground, the supervision, the getting kids on and off the school, ensuring that there's a warm, helpful face there to greet students off the bus, it is essential. Making sure that we have the right buses and bus sizes in an educational world, to me, is less of it. Our transportation outcomes, how they get to the school, is not as important as what they're doing in the school and who they're doing it with.
True. Thank you, Superintendent. Later on, I'll have a question if we have time about pre-AP programs, but I know you have to finish this up, so
Yes, sir.
I'll let you.
All right. Okay.
Mr. Pedraza, before you continue, I would just like to make a comment in reference to Councilwoman Bergner's question about transportation. I have had a conversation at least 3 or 4 times every year with our various representatives in the General Assembly about the pain of our transportation cost. And I know at one point, we sent a resolution to the General Assembly. It was not really recent, but we have done that. And I've explained to other reps that I have and senators that I have encountered that are not our representatives, to give them, they're thinking of their town, and that has to be their priority, but to give them an idea of what our transportation costs are. And back when I was a newbie on the school committee, I made and our transportation budget was $4 million. It no longer is. I made a comment to some school committee members from much smaller communities about our transportation budget being $4 million, and one of the women who had been on the school committee for a number of years said, "Oh, honey, I think it must be 400,000. I think you have that wrong." I said, "No." So I have been in touch. I have been talking to our reps and senators about the pain of the transportation.
I just think it's time to just put out another resolution from your end, because ours is in there. I mean, a lot of loud voices at the microphone can't hurt.
Yeah, we'll certainly take that under consideration.
All right, Superintendent, I know we have a few more slides left.
Yes, sir. Okay, next slide, please. So as referenced in terms of our strategic plan, and it is evolving, and we are still working, the administration, school improvement teams are working on the initiatives. We have adopted priorities and associated goals for each and every school, as well as the district aligned to these priorities. And if you'll see here that each one of those does relate back to the mission, as well as those core beliefs. Those core beliefs are, again, it's not about coming up with this catchphrase. Those are about research-based strategies and things that students need regardless of age, need, ability, that they need and deserve every single day. And we've embedded that into our priorities. And again, you'll see those reflected in our FY28 from building principals and school improvement teams. Next slide, please. Okay, not that this ever gets in. So also linked on discussion. So
This is the slide
is
that I could not understand,
Okay.
Mike could not understand. We don't,
Yep, so the full NESDEC report is available digitally, so those are online in terms of posted, this presentation. If you click there, it'll take you to the full NESDEC report, so you can look at historical trends. But there are significant changes, positive changes, from last year's NESDEC report so last school year in 24-25, and the projections they made for this current school year versus what the reality is. And so what I'm trying to do in this graphic here is show in the first column is the future school years that are coming up, what NESDEC projected just last year our K through 12 enrollment would be. And then now, 1 year later, what it is around, or what it is, and then the difference of those two in just 1 year. In just 1 year, you can see that we were anticipated last year in NESDEC's prediction, we were going to be substantially under 2,000 students in 3 years. In this, it's 4. And that ultimately, if we are taking and making staffing considerations on this and had continued to use NESDEC projections, we already have 41 students that we did not predict this school year in seats in the district. That's with an additional group of students who also continue to go out to charters and state schools. So the difference, so what I'm trying to show here is that just in year-to-year projections, this year, NESDEC is what we have, that plus 41, those exist. Next school year, fiscal year '27, using last year's NESDEC, they said we're going to have 2,010 students. Now they're saying, nope, you're going to have 2,087. And I will point out that this is just K through 12. I put in K through 12 because there is no mandatory pre-K. We do offer pre-K. It is a tuition, but very minimal, and because it is ultimately a early intervention special education program. So when I take a look at and try to get as definitive as numbers as possible, there is no mandatory pre-K, so I'm putting up here just K through 12 because these are students who are born already, they exist, they live in the town. And in terms of, I'm trying to just show how quickly that can change, and relying, and even NESDEC in the report itself says predictions get a little bit fuzzier in years 3, 4, and 5. Well, that can happen in year 1, and it did this year. However, in future slides, we believe why we know that might be happening, and we're going to be accounting for it moving forward, and I'm going to speak to those next. Next slide. So our current enrollment from the 16th, and this has been validated. I called up RIDE, made sure that we were using the correct reports and what the difference of different reports were, and we are validated here. So as of the 16th, in-district enrollment, so students in buildings, or that's the kind way of saying, I won't refer back to butts from last year, students in seats, or not in seats, or at recess. This does include pre-K through 12. It does include students who are in our transition program, so special education for students who have individual education plans. If a significant need, we, by state law, have them till they're 22. They would be in the transition program. This also includes tuition in from other communities. Because they're paying us tuition, we now have an obligation to them, so I've included them. And by the way, that is up. We have 11 students from other communities, and that is up from 6 in past years. So we have a total in-district, we see on a regular basis in schools with our educators, of 2,182 students this year. However, our financial and moral responsibility also goes out to another 290 students, of which are special ed related. There are 47. There are special ed placements. That's where a student's IEP calls for a level of service that we just cannot provide here in the district. It is significant enough that it requires an outside, out-of-district placement. Services only refers to our obligation of families that attend private schools. However, their IEP calls for us to give services to them, either as walk-in services or for us to go to that school. There are 47 total. And then what I've labeled as our largest out-of-district, and what I'm referring to here as choice, is 243. So we, in terms of our CTE number of students out of district, our number of students out of charter schools, as well as attending state schools, or students who have chosen to pursue a GED while they are young, their year of graduation has not expired yet, or then they are under the age of 18. We are legally required, if they, as part of their plan that they want to get a GED, we are responsible for that cost if that is part of their plan. So we have a fiscal responsibility to those students. That brings our total number of students in terms of total enrollment to 2,472. This number does get factored into state aid, that average daily membership. We had a robust conversation this time and last year. So all of these are South Kingstown students, with the exception of the 11 students that are coming in from other communities. They're counted in their own community. And it is that average daily membership from that 2,461 students that the state calculates their aid from. However, when we get to the revenue side, you'll see that I believe 5,700,000 divided by all of those students does not account to, when we say it follows the child, more money follows the child than what the state provides. So, and you'll see that with each one, or an average cost of $20,000 per out-of-district student. Next slide, please. So on our enrollment trend, so on the in-district, again, I'll just go back to the NESDEC projections. We need to be careful. Again, they called for a 3.8 decline. However, our actual decline as of October 1st was 1.8. Again, 40-plus students, K through 12. But again, that's impacting our current FY26. So whether it be class sizes, whether it be, once again, students who move in who have certain needs that weren't known and that we need to come up with that in terms of staffing, in terms of materials, needs to be accounted for, and we're doing that. Now, I bring up charters in the in-district enrollment, and this is what I was referring back to earlier, where in terms of what NESDEC doesn't account for, and that we can now consider now that we know what it is. So, our two charters in town, one ends at grade 5, and one ends at grade 8. This impact, we also, so often we're going, well, why is 6th grade so high? Well, 6th grade may be so high because one charter school is ending and they are choosing to not go to a new charter, but they are then coming to Broad Rock. Conversely, the same thing when the other charter school ends at grade 8, they choose not to go to another charter, and that is reflected actually this year. So in this current school year, or looking back to last year, we had 16 students last year tuitioned out going to charters in grade 5. We currently, in that cohort, if we assume grade 5 is going to become grade 6 and what we're paying out for, we currently have 9 students in grade 6 attending charter schools. And in grade 7 going to grade 8 grade 8 going to grade 9 this year, we had 7 in grade 8 that we were paying for. There are currently we are not paying for any student to go to a charter. Okay, they may be going to a CTE. Again, when I refer to charters in terms of the high school, charters in the high school would be the Village Green in Exeter and West Greenwich. I will then talk about the 9th grade or positive enrollment in district, is that this year's, or comparing our 9th grade CTE cohorts. So last year, of our potential incoming freshman class, 27 chose to do out-of-district CTE. This school year, of our 9th grade CTE, 19 have chosen to go out-of-district to another district CTE. So again, when I take, that 8th grade cohort, where are they going, how many are we paying for? That initial year, again, it's important to go and then take a look at that 9th grade year, because once you're in a school, once you're in a system, you'll make friends, you'll stay there, you may become comfortable. So to have students come to us and come to us earlier, it is an important trend. Shifting to the out-of-district, again, we do have a year-to-year increase in our charter enrollment. This school year, we are paying for 134 students currently to attend a charter school. And that is up from last school year of 127. We also see a year-to-year increase in state schools this year, none of which, I just want to highlight, is Rhode Island School for the Deaf, which would be part of maybe part of a student's education plan and placement. We do not currently have any students there. As such, I will refer to state schools in this fiscal year as schools of choice. That in the next slide, you'll understand why. Next slide, please.
Superintendent,
Yes,
before you move on,
Yep.
I just had a quick question while you're on the discussion of charters. A while ago, there was also some mention in town about the Providence Charter School, the Met, operating out of a facility in Wakefield
That is correct.
and taking students. Are we paying for any students to attend those classes?
Yes, sir.
Do you know how
Yes.
many?
Yes. 14. Next slide. Yep. Yeah, so, we'll address that in the next slide. So, in addition to transportation, with the large landmass that we have, with our schools spread out, without neighborhood schools having a disproportionate impact of similar communities in transportation, we are truly an outlier when it comes to charter schools and schools of choice. So South Kingstown literally is the only town in Washington County, Kent County, Newport County, Bristol County that has more than one charter school located within the town. Some towns have one, we have two. Additionally, Additionally, a state school has opened a satellite campus this school year in town, making a total of what I would refer to as 3 district choice programs. Again, not Rhode Island School for the Deaf in terms of education plan or need. So this is, but however, the Met is technically codified as a state school.
Superintendent, a
Yes.
charter school has to open by being approved by the Council of Secondary Education, correct?
That is correct.
Were they approved by the Council of Secondary Education to open up a satellite office?
It never went before the council, to my knowledge.
Don't you think?
It was never brought to my attention. We were never called for hearing.
It's
State school
a
different.
satellite campus, so it's technically not a new school, right? So it's a satellite, they're offering the MET programs in a satellite. I would assume that's how they get around that.
No, I get that. I'm just saying that it seems like a bad loophole that we're dealing with.
Absolutely.
That's all. Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Kate.
So each South Kingstown student who attends a charter, state, or CTE costs South Kingstown taxpayers approximately, and this is on the lowest end, $20,000 per student, which is requiring over $4.5 million of taxpayer dollars is in the South Kingstown School District budget to leave the district or to leave this organization in just this fiscal year alone. That does not factor in transportation obligations, of which we've talked about before in terms of transportation and out-of-district transportation. We get credits towards bills, towards statewide. And I would highlight that in many cases, as people used to talk about or think about charters, charters were able to open up in districts that were not performing. That is not the case in Rhode Island. One's ability for school choice is not impacted by state accountability scores. So you could be attending a 4-star school and school choice out to a lower performing school. And the taxpayers of South Kingstown need to fund that choice. Next slide. Our staffing here, my apologies, I know I needed to make a change to this slide, and so that this presentation came out a few times, and then I noticed that there was still one more. So what we have here is our current staffing. In parentheses is if there was a change from last year. And so ultimately that total change of 15 is not an additional 15, it is a negative 15. District, I want to make sure, because I know last year what positions fall into what buckets was a topic of conversation. So district-wide admin include the assistant superintendent, chief financial officer, director of athletics, director of facilities, director of student services, and the superintendent of schools, and the technology director. District-wide support accounts for an accounting manager, data quality manager, communications and transportation, an executive assistant to the assistant superintendent, an executive assistant to the superintendent, an HR coordinator, a math coordinator of instruction, network systems and systems administrators. School-based admin refers to principals and assistant principals. School-based support refers to deans. Instructional staff is teachers, interventionists. Instructional support is teacher assistant, job coaches at the Transition Academy, one-to-one teaching assistants, pre-K screeners. Student services refers to guidance, social workers, psychologists, OT, PT, speech, and special ed coordinators. And facilities and maintenance refers to custodial and maintenance. Clerical admin assistants is administrative secretaries, district registrar, executive assistants for student services, finance assistant, HR and finance assistant, a payroll coordinator, a tech clerk help desk, and a tech support clerk. Again, I'll refer back. When we're talking about staffing, I think I just want to, it occurred to me, or it resonated with me, I believe it was Mr. Shear's example last year, that as we tie or try to tie enrollment, even though I do it here at the bottom, there is never a one-to-one correlation of reduction of staffing to students. Again, if we say that if a typical classroom at max contractual capacity is $200,000, it's a $200,000 classroom, whether it's at 25 students or 20 students or 15 students. Until we're at a place where we are eliminating a classroom, there is no cost savings by reducing staffing, because we will still have to create those classrooms for those students. And additionally, as we'll remember, is that because it's fiscally motivated in most cases, and even if it wasn't, according to Rhode Island state law, all layoffs need to go from least seniority and start there at the bottom. So we're eliminating those at the lower end of the salary scale, not at the top scale. And I'll offer the next slide. And if there are no questions about enrollment or staffing, I will turn this portion over to Mrs. Proctor.
Thank you. Fiscal 26 expected revenue and expenditures. Revenue, town appropriation, $55,994,773. State aid, which is the formula aid, high-cost special aid from RIDE, $5,757,809. State and federal grants. This has decreased due to the ESSER grant going away, $1,777,790. Miscellaneous revenue, which is your tuition, Medicaid, local grants, private donations, refunds, reimbursement, and the RIDE 2% ERSRA contribution back to employer, $767,454. School lunch revenue, state aid, which is your school lunches through My School Bucks, pupil paid, and the state aid, which is the claims for the free breakfast and lunch reduction, $710,000. The fund balance capital is $1,155,000, and the fund transferred in, which was the town-approved fund transfer in of $608,295, which was a one-time benefit income. Total, $66,771,121. Expenditures, salaries, $31,199,411. Benefits, $14,402,658. Professional, technical, and other purchase services, which includes transportation, food services, and professional services, along with tuition and licenses, which will be $17,150,000. Supplies and materials, which are items that are not covered by the school budgets, $1,850,000. Property and cap expense, which are the property maintenance that keeps up during the course of the year for our schools, and the cap expense, which is the $1,155,000 that we have agreed to do for capital improvements this year, which totals $1,945,000, and other miscellaneous for $205,000. Total of $66,752,069.
So, as I'm sure there are going to be questions regarding revenue and expenditures, I would just once again put out there that in terms of revenue and expenditures, this includes everything from what is going to be in the general fund, and that is found and operates through what we're required to use in terms of UCOA and Munis. But it also includes things that never hit that, and that's generally the restricted use funds of in terms of school lunch revenue, it must go to lunch. Federal, state grants, generally it must go to certain programs, and there are implications if it goes to things such as things other than materials or purchase services, if it goes to people. And even the fund transfer in is a restricted revenue, as the source of it in terms of that rollover came from benefits, and so therefore needed to go towards benefits. It's not a matter of we have this 608, let's use it for something else other than where it was taken from. Additionally, what I would throw in here is that this does account for the additional approximately $300,000 that we need to make up for our maintenance of effort for the state aid to be released from those restricted funds and get to the town, and we are currently on pace to meet those goals. We will have a better idea once we get through February break in terms of capital projects, as there is some emergency some HVAC units as well as roofing that needs to occur. Obviously, those are projects that can't be done when students are in session. However, we do have the benefit of the school vacations where significant work can be done during those periods, weather permitting. And so we'll know if we're on target for those dates or whether it's a mad dash, as well as if we're already surpassed that number through other capital needs that may pop up or won't. Hopefully will not. So we will keep the council abreast of those capital projects and our 3% maintenance of effort. With that, if I can take questions, or we can take questions on revenue and expenditures, we can jump to our conclusion. Next slide, please. So again, I would just say that everyone here and our teams at the schools, at all the schools in the district, we believe that last year set the foundation. We had productive conversations and process from fiscal year 26, and that we believe that will continue in FY 27. We will be focusing on improving educational outcomes of all students through our efforts that are aligned to our new mission, our core values, and the priorities of this evolving strategic plan. We will continue to take actions and recommend actions that further stabilize and improve enrollment across the district, even though statewide enrollment is going down. It's not going down everywhere, and we want to give people the reason, and we will give people the reason to come here, and we will continue to implement those and look to support those next fiscal year. And we will continue to use relevant data and the most up-to-date data that we have to inform our processes and decisions moving forward. So with that, next slide. We're free to take any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Any questions from the council members? I got one I'd like to sort of discuss. We're continuing to see an increase in the number of out-of-district students. Looks like an increase of 14 year over year. Question I have, I just want to hear it from you, really. I understand there's a lot of flexibility with the students as to choice of school. Now, I had always understood it, and this may not be correct, but if a school outside the district offers a program that the school, public school in the town that they live in does not offer, they have the ability to just decide to go to that outside school for a program not offered. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now,
And when
how about,
the state did an audit of every single CTE across every single district and found no substantially similar programs exist anywhere in the state.
let me ask you this one, because I know
The Department of Education, the CTE board put forward and reviewed every single CTE program across all districts. They found that there was no substantial difference in programs offered. So in our former life, the entrepreneurship finance CTE in East Greenwich was substantially different enough from that of North Kingstown, where both of their CTE finance programs continue.
essentially allow greater flexibility for the students. Now, let me ask you this. I know SK has a strong theater program. I assume the Met Satellite School at the Contemporary Theater is focused on theater. But I guess it is the position of RIDE that they are different enough such that the student has the choice to attend that satellite school dedicated to that theater program as opposed to SK High, for example?
The Met is different in that it is not a charter-approved school. It is a state-run school. So while they call themselves the Met Career and Tech Program, they are not a typical CTE. They, along with Davies, are state-run schools and are not bound by the rules of that of charter enrollment.
So do you have any discretion when a student's parent sort of gives you some sort of notification that they'd like to leave the district to go to another school? I assume you have to sign off. How does that process work? Can you walk us through that?
So what ends up happening is that generally a student, as part of their application process for each district, will have the parent sign a release, an educational release of records, so that those can go forward in that application process. Most of our surrounding districts ask for a superintendent's signature of this. That's their way of notifying us that, hey, you might be paying us next year if this student is accepted. And different communities and surrounding communities do things differently. And in terms of there's very little oversight in terms of what that looks like. So our application process, while they'll look similar, each community has a different application process and is allowed to do so. They're also allowed to exit a student based on each LEA's rules for if they wish to return that student to their home district, and how many credits they have coming with them or not, or coming back with them, also varies by each student and circumstance.
So do you have any discretion to withhold signature on that application?
I do not.
What about as to vetting the application to ensure that it's for a program that is not similar to that offered at SK?
What we've done in terms of making sure that the taxpayers are protected and our numbers are valid is last year the committee put forward we revised our residency, causing all residents that we are paying for that attend a charter or CTE, that we are making sure that they are in fact residents of South Kingstown. Ultimately, in terms of, because the state findings of the board, we do not have substantially similar across any of them that are offered in surrounding communities. We don't have too many. The closest one tends to be something around computer science for most communities. However, our surrounding communities, the programs and offerings are noticeably different. So, for example, agriculture in Narragansett, the programs that go cosmetology elsewhere, So the ones that do tend to go out are generally not. However, what we also see is we also see on their application, which CTE are you applying for? And they list every single CTE, and they can check every single one. Which one they ultimately then get into is not then disclosed to us.
So, sort of speculating here, but I would like to believe that there's instances in which they identify a program at an out-of-district school that they sort of use to get into that school, and then after they've gotten into the school, they drop that program and now are in a program substantially similar to that offered at SK High, for example. Do we know if that's occurring?
No, we do not.
And there's nothing preventing that. So people, if they were doing it, there's nothing wrong with that under current state law and state regulations.
Right now, as long as they were to go through the application process and qualify, and people can change their CTE band if that's allowed by that LEA, by that school system, they can do that. What they would not be allowed to do is say, I went for agriculture, I don't like it, but I'm just going to keep on going here and not be part of a CTE. They then must, if they were to no longer...
So there is a mechanism to claw them back into SK Public Schools if they do that?
If they were not part of a CTE program, you cannot school choice your way to another district through any other mechanism other than CTE.
And that's actually being enforced? Like, are we seeing that happen at all?
We've seen students return to us who have decided to they do not like the program, or the sending district has said, you can no longer continue in the program. That does occur.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Superintendent, briefly. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand raised.
Go ahead.
Are you going to talk about CTEs, or are you going to talk about something else?
Something else.
Okay. So my question is about a number of years ago, we redistricted to rebalance the schools. And I don't know if it's true, but I'm hearing that the schools are slightly skewed again, that Matunuck might be smaller than the other two. Is there any value? Is there any truth to that? And is there any value in sort of looking at that again to sort of rebalance out the classroom sizes? Because classroom size is a predictor of achievement.
So in terms of our current, Matunuck is our smallest school. However, the cohort of students and the number of sections that are being offered are appropriate and are stable. So what we're not seeing is wild fluctuations. What we're seeing is that they consistently have and can support at least 2 sections of every grade level, where Peacedale has consistently, I believe this year, 3 across all grade levels, but also includes pre-K programming as well as other special ed programming. Where we're seeing, in some cases, some of the fluctuation tends to be at West Kingston. Also, complicating this, where we'll have some cohorts that are larger than others. We seem to have a little bit more in-migration. However, again, it fluctuates depending on the housing market. But again, at the elementary level, we're pretty stable. What also complicates that matter is that, especially with students with disabilities, we would be allowed, as if part of their education plan required a transportation of longer than an hour, but ultimately it isn't best practice, and I don't think any of us, never mind kindergarten through 5th grade, want to be on a school bus longer than an hour. But even in redistricting, depending on where we're going, we're then taking a look at longer transportation routes as well as unknown impacts of buses. So as of right now, I haven't run the enrollment report with the 16th, but we are relatively stable across all and do not see when we roll over grades.
How about, sorry.
So there's not like full classrooms at Peacedale of like 22, 23, 24, and then 12 at Matunuck?
No.
And 12 in the other section?
They're fairly balanced. Will it happen? It could, but it also might happen at West Kingston, although we did take action this summer to make sure that we can handle our in-migration and make sure people come to their home school, because just like charter schools, or any school, the earlier folks go in, the more likely they are to stick with it, as well as, again, we want to start tackling the elementary level, because CTE is one thing, that's 4 years, of tuition payments, where elementary is potentially K through 8, where we're talking 9 years of payment or smaller, as well as, and we believe that when people if they move in, and if we are at capacity at another school and they cannot attend their home district school, that's a driver out, and we want to do anything but. And so we did add a grade 2 this year that was unintended or unexpected due to this enrollment increase, but it also provided equity of class sizes across the district. So, but again, at that point, it's also then cost considerations, but in this case, it was the right thing to do, as well as the long-term investment in our enrollment.
Thank you.
Do you want to go? Are you sure? Okay, thank you. 2 brief questions. Yonder pouches, we have adopted them in South Kingstown, correct?
That is correct.
And would these be under the expenditures of supply and materials?
Not yet. Those would have been purchased through ESSER federal dollars.
Right, but for the following year, are we handing them down like hand-me-downs, or are we buying new ones for folks?
I anticipate having conversations with Dr. McGare in terms of what the replacement, taking a look at the replacement and wear and tear issues.
Considering that this is a CIP meeting, I think that would be good to follow up on for the next meeting. You know, if you're going to buy them for next year, if we're going to have to budget for that, then yeah.
Yes. Yep, we would budget for that replacement. However, we're also going to look at all schools across the district, as well as the existing students who are staying with us and the exiting, to see, can we replenish those in-house
Yep.
due to declining enrollments elsewhere where we might have pouches that have never needed to be implemented, or the wear and tear isn't as bad as we thought, and so again, that would fall under our supplies and materials.
Understood. In the future, I'd love to talk to you more about enforcement of the Yonder pouches. I've heard feedback that sometimes, kids can just take them out of the pouches during the day, and I think that should be a conversation for another time. And then my last question for the night. So to clarify, does South Kingstown currently offer any formal pre-AP programs for our students?
Pre-AP, such as the new pre-calculus and seminar, those programs?
Sure.
We currently do not. However, Dr. McGare is looking at those. We have approved a program of studies. Essentially, what it would be, can we sustain the cost of pre-AP and that testing for things for like pre-calculus? So we're already offering pre-calculus, setting up AP and associating a cost with it. We need to take a look at those.
Programmatically, I would be super supportive of trying to help push that forward for you all.
Thank you.
I think it's a really important piece of it, and it allows South Kingstown to stop trying to chase the CTE money and really focus on where it's at, which is the AP. So
yeah, we've had conversations regarding that, especially my affinity is for the AP seminar in terms of, because you can start that in your sophomore year, as well as it then resonates throughout senior project and puts those skills down, as well as enables students to tap into their intrinsic motivation regardless of what subject it is, which is not typical for AP programming.
totally acclimating students to being able to do the pre-AP or the AP requirements is a very important part of getting them college ready, right? College prep. So you know this. So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Any questions, comments from school committee members? Well, it's public. We're opening it up for public hearing. Or not a public hearing, but for public comment. All right. Thank you, Superintendent Pedraza, CFO Proctor. If anyone in the audience wishes to speak on the topics we discussed tonight, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes. When you begin speaking, this clock will begin counting down. If you have specific questions, we'll do our best to try to field them from our experts here. Jim, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jim O'Neill, Wakefield. Just 3 quick questions of Brian, if I could. Brian, on page 18, your $10,804,000 principal and interest cost, what interest rate did you use for that?
I did just get an updated run from our financial advisor. I don't recall off the top of my head. I'd have to get back to you. I want to say it was around 3.5, 3.75. I don't recall. It was in that range.
Yeah, I know we played around with that
Yeah.
area originally.
I did just get a recent run from him, both as an estimate for the upcoming bans
Right.
and the issuance, and I want to say it was in the 3.5, 3.75
Right.
range.
I'd appreciate if I could give you a call tomorrow
Absolutely.
and find that out. But along with that, that's based on 150 million, not this 141 million potential cost, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, if you know or who knows, the 141 million, are all the contracts in place? So if everything goes right, that's a number we could count on?
Don't believe all that.
Or any
We're
major
gonna-
contracts
We're
left?
going to get all that information. I believe the dates are January 6th January 8th at the school building committee. We'll get the final GMP, which
Okay.
will be, all that information will start to come through and will come in front of the council. The 12th is Monday, I think the 12th.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Okay, thank you. And then lastly, I kept thinking of the Monopoly game, but I assume we cannot use your expertise that you earn some investment income from bands for operation purposes. It has to be in the debt world.
It is earned interest of the town. For now, I've moved it into, it's earned interest related to the bands. It's been left there. The council could move that elsewhere. That is earned interest of the town. I've kept it designated separate from other funds and in the debt service fund, but it is earned revenue of the town.
All right, yeah, I just didn't know if your attorneys and accountants, what's allowed there. I'm not sure from the old days to current days, but I thought that was not allowed.
The thing with it, so we say, again, I'm using the assumption we take in $1 million. The draw on the general fund for the bands this year, the total draw is 1.7 million. So it's still under that amount. We'd be using that interest that we earned to pay down the bands this year, or we have it segregated.
All right, great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Jim. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak? I invite you to just come on up. Oh, if you could, the button on the right.
That one?
Yep.
My name is Vanessa Armano. I'm in Wakefield. I was hoping to come early to these conversations to kind of plant an early seed about class sizes. I am the parent of a fourth grader at Petersdale, and he is one of 25. And last year he was one of 18-ish. And I think that's a significant difference in classroom management and helping the environment to be more inclusive. And you have 504s and IEPs, and I know contractually 25 is your number, but I worry about the product of education with that number. And I do wonder if it's a bit different in the other schools. I don't have those numbers, but that would be worth talking about. And then just out of curiosity, looking at these numbers, your outplacement numbers, I'm assuming, I know student protection here, but where they go, I would imagine that cost could be up to 6 figures for these, the student support services. Have we ever thought about creating our own programming in-house? Would that be cheaper to keep them in-house versus paying for outplacement? So I'll go sit.
So that is something that Dr. Carson, our Director of Student Services, and the IEP teams would review annually, and is a partnership, is part of the partnership of those IEP meetings. I can't speak to, but can find out in terms of some of those placements. But you are correct in that they can be significant. But in terms of any opportunity to bring students back and provide services here in their hometown, we look to do that. Every opportunity to do so.
All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak? All right, seeing none, that's going to bring us to the end here. Thank you for the presentations, very informative. We look forward to a productive budget season. We can collaborate in good faith and eventually pass a budget in the best interests of both the town, the schools, and all residents at large. But for now, Happy New Year's. Let's relax. Let's enjoy the time off, and see you in 2026.
So our next meeting, with the CIP work session, will be Monday, January 5th. We said at the beginning, we say it at the end, and then Tuesday, January 6th, at both meetings, 7 p.m. at Town Hall. The school committee will be at the second meeting, which is Tuesday, January 6th. So again, this is the first initial budget hearing. People from the public, we wanted to hear from you. We always want to hear from you. You have opportunities now to communicate with us, either email us or call us or communicate with your school committee members, because those are the influencing information, like Vanessa Armano just said about the classroom size. Well, it's well said, and we encourage everyone to keep giving their input and voice.
All right, because there are votes taken tonight, I ask that we do a motion to adjourn. Do I hear that motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, this meeting is over.
Thank you all.